Welcome to The Creative Influencer, where we discuss all things creative with an emphasis on influencers. The Creative Influencer is hosted by John Pfeiffer. John is an entertainment attorney in Santa Monica, California, who represents influencers and other creatives.
This is the 7th Minisode of the 7th season of the Creative Influencer podcast. Today we're going to talk about the termination of influencer management agreements. Generally speaking, in most management agreements, termination by the influencer can only be for cause. What does that mean? Well, when we say for cause, we're talking about a legal reason that's good enough for ending the contract. In the world of influencer management agreements, for cause could mean things like the manager not delivering the promised brand deals, or perhaps taking more commission than what was agreed upon. It's like the rules of a fair game. If one side cheats or fails to deliver, then the contract can be terminated. This highlights the importance of hashing out these details in the agreement so the contract spells out expectations and you and your manager are on the same page. It also highlights the importance of documenting events, such as the lack of cooperation, that may give rise to grounds for the termination of the relationship. So, let's say one of the parties being legal speak for one of the individuals involved in the agreement, either the influencer or the manager. So, if one of the parties does breach the agreement in such a significant way that you decide to terminate the management agreement, then the next consideration is how to fairly compensate the manager. Compensation after termination is subject to negotiation. There is no set industry standard, but typically, if the manager is terminated while a brand deal is already in process, the manager will receive the rest of their percentage cut. And sometimes, if the brand deal is being negotiated when the manager is terminated, the manager will still receive their cut. Why? Well, think of it this way. The manager has worked to help the influencer with their brand deals, and if the management agreement is terminated while they are doing their work, then they're owed payment of money for their work. But again, as I said earlier, how this works is all subject to negotiation and on a case-by-case basis, depending on the experience and connections of the party. If the influencer already has a lot of connections before they hire a manager, and they work on a project that one of those previous connections, then potentially the influencer may negotiate a lower rate for paying the manager upon termination. On the other hand, if the manager is the one bringing the most experience to the negotiating table and has strong industry connections, then they may be able to negotiate a higher percentage, even if they are terminated. This makes logical sense. The work that an influencer does and the compensation they receive may not be directly tied to the manager's effort and work before the management agreement was terminated. Next, we'll look at confidentiality, non-disparagement, and indemnification. And finally, we'll discuss conflict resolution. In other words, how are disputes between a manager and influencer resolved? Stay tuned.
That's it for this time. If you enjoyed our podcast, please write a review on iTunes and tell your friends to subscribe. If you have any questions about influencers or suggestions for future episodes, email them to John at Pfeiffer@pfeifferlaw.com. Thank you for listening.